So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for a living currently.
Yeah. So I've had like not a typical career path at all. Out of college, I went into the Air Force because I wanted to be a fighter pilot. Of course, I
That's
did.
so badass.
Um, I actually wanted to drink beer and hang out with the guys, and I thought that that would be a solid way to do both
Do
those
so.
things.
Yeah.
Turns out being a fighter pilot was a whole lot more studying than I had bargained for. But so I was in the Air Force. I got commissioned as an officer, spent 6 years out in LA, had an awesome time, but grew up in the Toledo area. So eventually made my way back. I've always done like sales, marketing, and literally gotten pulled into HR every single time. So I always got hired as a salesperson because everyone's always looking for salespeople.
Mhm.
And like an HR job would come along and they'd be like, oh, Nancy, she'll be great at that. To the extent of one time a CEO was like, Nancy, she can run our accounting department. And I was
You're
like,
doing something right, lady.
yeah, I think you have the wrong person. Like literally, that's what I said to the CEO. I'm like, I think you're confused. I'm like, I'm dyslexic. Like, and numbers are like not my thing for sure.
Mhm.
Um, and so I honestly wasn't even diagnosed at that point. Like I
Mhm.
mean, I knew I was dyslexic. I joked about it, but and so I was like, I don't think that. And he's like, no, no, no. He's like, it's like organizational processes, and I'm like, I mean, I'll try, but like, just feel free to like tell me if I'm doing a terrible job. And so that really got me started in like the organizational HR aspect of things. Um, and I do really like people. Like I really genuinely have like always, my mom would say like, I've always rooted for the underdog. Like I'm the kid on the playground that like goes and hangs out with like the kid that doesn't have any friends. So like HR kind of fits in that way.
Mhm.
But I hate rules and I hate structure and I hate like stop signs and speed limit signs like legitimately make me mad.
Yeah.
Like, why is somebody telling me what to do? It's totally irrational, but it does. Um, so so there's like this conflict of like helping people, which is great, and having to follow rules, which is awful in HR.
Mhm.
But there's like legal things.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, so I spent 8 years kind of like in one company, but had like a ton of different jobs in that company, which is I think the only reason I lasted 8 years at one company, because literally every 18 months I'd be like, what's next, what's next, what's next, and they would have a new project and a new job for me, and it was different and challenging like every time. So
Mhm.
that was fun. And then eventually just kind of like outgrew the company. There wasn't anywhere else to go. I was reporting the CEO for a few years. And so then I looked outside and found this VP of HR job and thought, of course I can, right? It says I can. Um, super awesome CEO that I knew when I met the CEO, I was like, I need to like learn from him. Like he is awesome, super just great executive presence. And I was on the executive team of like 400 to 500-ish person company. So like a lot of like expansive like leadership over different locations and states. Um, so that was super fun and also super stressful, and all of like the mental stress that like we put on ourselves was
Oh.
super taxing on top of like the job's taxing, right? But like me trying to do that mentally was tough. And I eventually just got burnt out, honestly. Like I did it for almost 3 years. And so my kids are, I have a stepson who's 13, a daughter who's 13, and a son who's 8. And so I was like, I can't, like, I'm missing like the best years of my kids. Like, what?
Mhm.
And literally like working 70 to 80 hours a week. So it was like, and like, I knew that I would probably end up divorced. My kids would hate me and potentially like sick.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Like, you can only handle like that much stress for so
Yeah.
long. And
Mhm.
no amount of money at the end of it is like worth it if you're like alone and your kids hate you and you're on the
Yeah.
beach.
Yeah.
That'd be embarrassing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I kind of had this epiphany of almost a year ago. I went and talked to my CEO and I was like, hey, look, like this job's amazing. Everything's great, except for that, like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
And I really didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew that I was going to go out on my own. My husband owns his own business. My parents have always owned their own businesses. Dad's also dyslexic and ADHD. I don't know how my mom puts up with our family. But I watched him grow and like build these really successful businesses. And I've always wanted to do it, but like I've always had good jobs. So there's like the security of good jobs, right? And so I knew I wanted to go out on my own and try it. And so there was a long transition. It was like 5 months of transitioning, finding my new replacement and getting her, whatever, all in the right spots. And then I took some time off, literally just to like take a breath and figure out who my kids were and repair some of that. And then just like kind of peeling back the layers on like all these scripts that I had wrote in my own head of like how I had to like outwork everybody and I had to like super overprove myself to like it was crazy. Like it's still crazy. I still catch myself daily being like, what am I trying to prove? Like I don't know what I'm doing. But also the reason that I am successful too, right? Like outwork everybody does have its benefits. So it was after the end of the summer that like I knew that there was like this key in my like this like locked box in my brain, and there's a key and it was floating around and I couldn't grab it. Like I knew that there was something more than just HR consulting because that's so boring and whatever. I don't know. And I'm just not like the typical person anyways. So I finally was like, oh my gosh, like that's it. Like helping people like me figure out the work world that I've also navigated myself and didn't really know that I was navigating it differently. Like I knew I was different, but I couldn't put a name to it. And so that's when I really started like diving into it and just researching more of like, and then it started like to come together like, oh, I do that. I've always done that, but I didn't know why I did that. And then I'm like, what if I can just like help other people speed up this process? So that's kind of where I'm at now. I do traditional HR work too, just because I get pays the bills. But yeah, and I'm really selective on the people I work with. Like I only work with clients that get my brain and like they're like, oh, you crazy speller, you.
Creative speller. Yeah,
they're okay with it. So yeah,
absolutely.
So that was kind of long-winded. Sorry.
No, that's not at all. It's exactly what we want. And just so you have like a little bit of background with what the heck we're doing with this and why we're doing it, I guess would be nice for you too. We don't really know yet, but what we know is we are really enjoying having these conversations, and we're just really enjoying meeting people and learning about lived experience. So we've been taking just small snippets to put on our TikTok, but we don't think that's like the right platform for this because these are such long-winded and nuanced and important like deep conversations that we're having that like people don't go to TikTok for. So we don't really know.
Potentially like podcast or YouTube like later on, just so that more people can actually get the full context of people, because 15 little seconds of a snippet doesn't do it justice.
But but that being said, like at the end of this, maybe we can get your email address so that when we do figure out what the heck we want to do with it, we can just make sure that you're cool with what we're doing and you're informed and all of that. But yes, keep your answers as long-winded as possible. That's fine. If we need to send another link, that's fine too. I think this one might cut us off at 30 minutes, but
it shouldn't.
It shouldn't? Okay. No. Well, I scheduled it for 30 minutes because I didn't want you to feel intimidated if I like said an hour and you're like, I'm just there for 5 minutes. But so that is such a super cool journey, and just like a little, I guess, quick background about us and how where our paths are kind of crossing. But we're both occupational therapists.
Yep.
And we've been practicing occupational therapist for like 3.5 years and have been in like the hospital setting, pediatrics, residential facility. And like you, we kind of, I stayed at a job for almost 2.5 years. But I'm someone that likes to always have a new adventure and a new challenge too, and it keeps me engaged. And we're the kind of people that were just like always getting frustrated with the arbitrary rules and red tape. And like, we felt like we could give so much more in our therapy than what insurance was allowing us to do or what our organizations were allowing us to do. So we're like, how about let's do our own thing?
Yeah. Especially with insurances, how it's more about not necessarily quality of life. They're just like, is it medically necessary? I'm like, okay, but what about quality of life here? Like, you know, work-life balance, that type of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you want to talk a little bit about NASA? Like, 'cause that's kind of how it initially, we even considered the world of like workplace consulting.
Yeah. So one of my friends is actually a NASA scientist. Don't ask me exactly what she does. I just know she shoots up a rocket with a big rocket to make sure that there's no like big thunder clouds. But she saw that a lot of her employees were on the spectrum and whatnot, and getting themselves in trouble with HR quite often because of their interactions with like higher ups in different, like even UO. Why can't I think of the big meeting place for governments around the world?
Oh, the UN?
Yes,
United Nations?
okay. United Nations.
UNC Bank. No,
Yeah, sorry. The dyslexia, the word finding, it happens. But yeah, for United Nations, you know, they're like doing kind of inappropriate things with people because they were told at a bar that that's what you're supposed to do. So kind of lines fading between. So that's where I kind of started this more organizational stuff, because my friend was like, hey, this would be perfect to kind of talk about social context and like what you should do, what you shouldn't do for a workplace versus your home life, you know, because we don't want to lose our NASA scientists. Their brains are so unique and like so valuable, yet we can't be having like national, you know, things occurring. So yeah, that's where I kind of started in this whole organizational element. But I still, at the end of the day, like have my pediatrics. I'm a neuro-based OT, so like sensory integration and all that stuff. So still try to bring some type of neuroscience into everything.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh, my like brain's like spinning. I'm just soaking it all up now.
Yeah.
What are your names, by the way? I'm so sorry.
Rachel.
Stephanie.
Yeah, we're just diverged, as I'm sorry. Rachel and Stephanie.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
like, I want to ask questions, but I don't know how to like, okay.
Good. And then, explain yourself, Rachel, like a little bit backstory.
Yeah. So I'm also like a neuro occupational therapist. So my kind of passion and specialty has been in traumatic brain injury. And so I've worked most of my long 3-year career has been with people with traumatic brain injury, and I've done lots of continuing ed there. But I'm also, honestly, a lot of Stephanie and I went to school together and also worked one of our jobs together. And so I learned a lot about like what neurodiversity is and what it means through Stephanie. And she has helped me identify, like figure out my identity quite a bit. And like, she thought it was really cute that I didn't think I had ADHD. and I had recently been diagnosed with OCD when I met Stephanie. And so just like, Stephanie just had like such a way of being like, just embracing it. And just like, it was just normal for her. She's like, I grew up with this. This is just, people are different. And so that was really inspiring for me. And then I kind of latched onto that and got really interested in like other people's lived experience. And my mom is 60 and she was just diagnosed with ADHD last year because of Stephanie's insight, really. And I mean, my mom's like off the chart ADHD, and really she's an engineer, she's freaking brilliant, but has always struggled with performance reviews and performing in her jobs and not working 80 hours like you said. And so I feel really fortunate that I've kind of figured out a lot of this while I'm still relative, I'm 28, so it's like I'm not I have a lot of my career to make changes. But it's also brought to my awareness like how little people still know about themselves and about
Mhm.
how these differences present themselves and how they can be such a it's just different. It's not necessarily bad. And so that how we can just kind of start having a conversation about these differences as kind of a beautiful thing and a thing that can provide a lot of value. So we have a few like just basic introductory educational presentations scheduled on what is neurodiversity in our community. And we're just kind of seeing where that goes. Like our main objective there is just like awareness and advocacy, not so much maybe it will turn into like a revenue source, but for us right now, it's just
that advocacy.
getting people talking about it. So
yeah, no, so one of my clients, like the one I work mostly with, he's out of DC, he's a CPA. And so the first time I was with him, I said like, by the way, I'm dyslexic and ADHD. And he got like, I think like scared, it's been like a long time since like I've like had like that reaction. So I was like, oh,
yeah.
I always like I think I say to everybody in the grocery store that I see, like, I don't know. I'm like, hey, I'm dyslexic. I can't do math or cash or whatever. And so anyways, he picked me up from the airport like 2 weeks later because we were going back to his office again. He's like, by the way, I've read more about this and I understand it more. And I think I have one of those things. I was like, I think you do too.
Yeah.
But like I didn't
Just those conversations.
and I'm like, that's why he's like a successful, like he's got this successful firm and like 30 people working for like, and I'm like, like yes, it's like it's a good thing. And he's like it's interesting to watch the process out of body for somebody else.
Absolutely.
No, it's kind of like selfishly fun.
Yeah,
because we've known each other for we went through grad school.
7 years.
Yeah, 7 years. So I've seen Rachel kind of start to identify with herself more, and it's just like, yeah, it's taken 7 years to be like, yes,
But it's funny, like when I first met you, and like I didn't know anything about ADHD. When you said you had ADHD, I was like, okay, just like I just was completely unaware. And Stephanie was always like kind of checking in on me, like she had a pulse about like my external body cues that I didn't. So she'd always be like, hey, you doing okay? Do you need a break? And I'm like, what? I'm fine. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, sometimes it just takes that personal experience to see it in someone else. And so that's why like you and now me are so valuable in being like, hey, here's this really obvious thing that might change your world.
Right. Yes. Yeah, that's so
So okay, next question. What are some things that you're really good at?
So many. But I have so many to balance it out. So super good at like okay, so one thing I'm really good at is in the recruiting space. And I've been lucky, like at the top of organizations in HR, like I know all the different pieces and things going on, which is super valuable. I think most HR people probably get stuck in a silo and they don't necessarily know what else is going on in the company. But for me, I can talk to somebody in an interview and I like literally don't even know what position I'm interviewing for, and I really don't care. Like I just learn about the person and try to pick out their strengths and then adapt them to one of the many positions we have. And sometimes at work, like the last CEO I had didn't really like that. Like, he's like, no, if you went to marketing school, like you're like doing that path. And I'm like, ooh, but a marketing person in HR could help us with employer branding and build out this social media platform and like help us recruiting. And he's like, I don't know. But like, so in the recruiting world, like I have just like a kind of a sixth sense about people and like picking out their strengths, maybe even when they don't even know their strengths. And then in the business, like I love big picture business. I love business and I love helping companies make money strategically. And so like bringing the human element into it, but then just like I was in a meeting once for a transportation company that I worked for, and I was like, why is it so hard to order a truck? Like if some guy's on a shipping dock and needs a truck, I can order a pizza faster than they can and track it. Like, right? Like through Marco's Pizza, it's not even a huge place. easier than we can order then they do it every day. Like, why can't we be that easy? Like, we should have Alexa or Siri, like,
Right.
for us. Like, what are we doing? And they're like, oh, yeah. Like, so, like, those type of things, just like out of the box, crazy ideas, are probably like some of my, and I just like to have like,
Awesome.
don't take myself too seriously either, which the higher up you get in the business world, like the more people think you need to be serious. And I've just never like let myself get there. Like, I'm like, no, like, if you need me to be serious, then that's like, go find somebody else. Like, because I can't fake that.
Those are such beautiful neurodivergent strengths, right? It's like this idea of like your cognitive flexibility and your creativity and your ability to see and think about things differently. Like, it sounds like your boss is probably like, wait, but this is the way it's always been done, and this is how it should be done. You're like, but does it need to be? Because this person's really good at this. And I love your emphasis on the strengths and really playing on those, because so often we're focused on what people can't do and making it better when it's just like, hey, but there's so many things they can do, so let's prioritize those first.
Yeah. And I've always, so spelling, I mean, I know dyslexics in general have a tough time spelling. I have an insanely tough time spelling, even my own name. I'm not joking. Like, it's bad. There's 5 letters, for gosh sakes. Like, but so I literally have always like paid people in Starbucks gift cards or lunches or whatever to proofread my stuff like over and over again. Not knowing what I was doing, but I worked at Verizon as a sales rep once. And I would literally turn my tablet over and have them punch in their phone number for me, because there was no way in heck I was going to get but like, I didn't think that I wasn't like, I'm dyslexic, so I'm going to have you type in your phone number. I just figured, like, after the 3rd time of trying to type in somebody's phone number and not coming up right, I'm like, let's make this.
Yeah.
But, and then to my last job, I had an executive administrator who was amazing. Literally on day 1, I was like, so I'm dyslexic and I can't spell, and writing's like super tough too. Like, I can get the words out sometimes, but it's grammatically awful. And so anyway, she was like, oh, you're cute. I'm like, whatever. Like, you're well spoken. You know what I mean? Like, you're well like looked at in the company. And she told me a year later, she was like, if you wouldn't have told me that, I would have like thought you knew somebody in the company to get the job. She's like, there's no way that like reading the way you write, like, I don't know how you ever got to be a VP of anything. Like, if you hadn't told me that, I would have just thought that you didn't deserve them. And so I'm like, it really solidified, like, I have to tell people, like, to make it okay for them, and to like have people understand that, like, this is not like ADHD is not like, oh, I like look at squirrels out the window. Like,
Right.
Yeah. Like, I'm legitimately crying in front of my computer trying to focus. I would give anything to focus some days. It is a real thing, and it's not that I'm typing too fast and I misspelled a word. Like, it doesn't look wrong. I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's so apparent that you are like mindful of what your like codependent needs are. Like, we all have things that we rely on others for, and that's not inherently a weakness. It's just like knowing yourself and advocating for it. So I think that's so kind of inspiring that you're like, I come in and I just own it right off the beginning. I'm gonna need someone that's proofread. Stephanie's the same way with me. She's like, I'm not posting anything until you read it first, because I know. But then I'm also not great, so then I have my husband proof it too. So we got to trade them.
Yeah. No, but she's like, oh, for the blog post for our website, can you do all these things? I'm like, absolutely. I will write all the blog posts any day, but you need to edit it, because it'll look like word vomit, and it made sense up here. I don't know if it made sense to you. So
but without really owning it, it can, like, you can kind of give people power to like minimize you for that
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
try and rewrite the narrative how they want to write it of like, oh, you're not smart or you
Mhm.
can't communicate. It's like, well, no.
Yeah.
I know what I can and can't
No,
do.
if
Let me
someone,
tell you.
yeah, if someone were to read my email or something, they'll be like, "Oh, you are not a smart individual." I'm like, I don't know. I do have a master's in neuroscience type stuff, so not. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Well-
my dogs have to go out there being obnoxious right now.
They're so cute. You kind of answered like the meat of the question that we like with this interview is like, what do you wish people understood more about the conditions that you identify with? But is there anything you wanted to add on that?
So recently it's been like on my brain. I feel like there are people that use the terms and don't really like, they use it in a joking way,
Mm-hmm.
but then and maybe don't really have it, but it's just kind of like a fun thing to say, whatever. And then there's people that really have it and don't say it.
Yeah.
And so my husband and I, we just got back from vacation and we were talking about this, and he's neurotypical, which is like so weird. He's like, we have like less neurotypical people in our house. Like the neurodiverse people outweigh the neurotypical.
Yeah.
It's nice. But so we were talking, and he's like, but how would I like know, like if I said it jokingly that I have ADHD, like how would I don't mean that in a mean way. And I'm like, no, you're right. Like I think it's not to put more pressure on the neurodiverse people, but it's almost up to us to like start the conversation and like say like, no, this is really a thing. Like, and I really do struggle with it, and I'm not joking, and like be brave enough to say it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I don't think anybody's trying to like do harm by joking about it. Like I don't like, maybe I just see too much good in the world, but I don't think that they're like inherently bad or need to be bad. But I think we have to start empowering people to like really talk about it and say like, look, this is a weakness, like this is something that I need help with, like, and I want you to help me with it, but here's all of the things that you're going to get in return, which are amazing. And the more we can like list out those things, I think like on the front end and say like, hey, okay, yeah, like my spelling is terrible, but look, we have Grammarly and all the other things, and Sarah, like is a great spell checker, so who cares? What you can't get with Sarah is all these creative, crazy ideas that are going to put you on the map and build your company.
Mm-hmm.
Like what employer wouldn't? They're like, oh yeah, I'll take your spelling any day.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's just kind of like been on my mind. It's not easy. I met with a lady 2 weeks ago. She works for a big company, like a big global company that's headquartered here in Toledo. And she's having like the toughest time going through. She went through the ADA process for ADHD, and like I get it because I was on the HR side. Like ADA is literally like a phase gate to stop people from, like it is so inherently negative in like the whole way it's written.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
the legal pieces of it, and like it, but I wanted to be like, you shouldn't have done that. You should have just gone and talked to your manager, and like I hate that the system's broken, but it's broken. Like it's not going to help you.
Yeah.
And I wish it wasn't broken. And in 30 years, it probably won't be broken, but like, it's not going to get fixed fast enough for you.
Right.
I don't know. It's frustrating, but it kind of like a realization that even in big companies that talk about diversity and all the stuff, like they don't necessarily really want to deal with it either.
No, yeah, it seems like it's more lip service sometimes. I went back and forth. Is there value in disclosing for me? Is there not? Is there? But like I got to a point that I needed support, and I needed for my OCD. Like I just needed my boss to know. And then like in telling them, I didn't get any support. It was just like it just would always like come up. Like if I was like struggling just with something unrelated, it's like, oh, is this because of your OCD? And you're like, this really didn't help me. So like how can we have a way that we can get the support we need without it just backfiring on us? It's tough.
It's tough too, because it's not always the same. Like there are days where meetings are fine, right? Like I'm just pulling meetings. I'm just for an example, but like there are days when meetings with big people and all the sensory things are fine. And then there's other days where maybe like there's more stressors going on in the background or whatever, and they're not fine. And so it's hard because it's not like the same thing always helps. And it's not like the same thing always triggers.
Yep.
But that's like life too, right? Like everybody has stuff going on in the background, and neurodiverse, neurotypical, it doesn't matter. Like there are days where things like affect you differently. And like if we could just get more flexible on like reading people and being okay with bad days.
Yeah.
Like I think that would at least be like a start into it of like, oh, that person probably has something going on, or they're, I mean, I don't know, you girls probably don't have kids yet, but, or ladies, sorry. But like there are days where I drop off my kid and literally cry to work, right? And then like you get in the parking lot and you put your game face on and you go in. But like the minute something would happen, you're like, I don't have the energy for that today. Like, oh, it doesn't, it's not even that I'm ADHD or dyslexic, like that's just life.
Yeah.
And like I just think we have to like start being just a little bit more understanding that like people don't like, they don't leave their lives at the door.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't know.
Absolutely.
I'm preaching to the choir, and we all know this, but like how do we get CEOs and leadership people to like say, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like for people like us that are more vocal and like will chat someone's ear off, it's like I almost feel like there's more pressure and more weight on us to speak for people that don't feel comfortable. Like you said, people that do have it but won't say anything about it. You know, I kind of almost feel like it's like our obligation to help them communicate their needs too, you know?
100%. I have two kids. They're both, well, one's getting tested next week in Ann Arbor. But formally, because you can't do anything in the dang school system without.
No.
Yep.
Anyway, I can't even do the child route because I'm way too close to it that it's like too emotional for me to like do it. But like I like every time I start to struggle with it, I'm like, no, because my kids deserve a better chance than me. You know, and again, like, my parents did everything. Like I had all the support in the world and I never got diagnosed. My dad didn't get diagnosed. He has patents on top of patents, and like, I mean, he's crazy smart, right? But like I want and both my kids know, we talk about it. Like I think my one stepson's like, I want that. Like I want to be dyslexic. I'm like, well, buddy, it's good and bad, but yeah, like I want them to feel like they can walk into a room and own it. And my daughter does. She's 13 and she's like, every kid in that school knows she's dyslexic and she's proud of it. My son's very opposite of that, but yeah, I want a workplace that she can go in and be like killer and know she's killer because of her brain. And it'll probably take us 25 years to get there.
In it for the long haul though.
I think it's a worthy, I don't know, I'm a big Simon Sinek fan, but like it's the worthy cause that's worth fighting for in my world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think like parenthood, like you talked about, I think that's like kind of one of the biggest places that you can make that difference is just being the role model for your kids. And I know Stephanie's kind of more in the space of thinking about kids than I am, but I do know that it's going to be a way to move the dialogue along too, is through our kids. So keep being awesome and keep showing that and being proud for your kids, because that's huge and that rubs off to the kids' friends, and it's just, there's a ripple effect, you know?
Yeah.
No, and it's good that you're there supporting them too and kind of modeling it, because being like a pediatric therapist myself and having the talk with parents like, hey, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and like it might be the time to start modeling type of things is huge, and just like the developmental need behind it, and being like, you can speak to them with all the evidence, like, listen, this is like going to be the best for their like self-confidence and for them to be able to advocate for themselves, because I can tell them all their regulation strategies, but if they can't tell their teacher or their boss, it's not gonna be as impactful. So, and you need to be the one kind of showing how you do that.
Yeah.
So I applaud you for starting.
So we have a therapist for my 8-year-old son who is ADHD as well. I wish he was dyslexic too, because it would really help. He's not. He doesn't know anything about dyslexia, but anyways, it's fine. But it's like he's helpful, but at the end of the day, Jack doesn't melt down in the hour session that we're there, right? Like
right. Yeah. It's the whole environment. Yeah.
He's tired and he has to do homework and he's done for the day and he can't be done for the day. And so parents have to be there and we have to own it ourselves too. Like you said, like if the child's ADHD or dyslexic.
Where we get that one? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't magically appear. I don't know. You guys are the scientist people, but I don't think it just magically appears. So
no, it doesn't.
So I was thinking, like, while we were talking, I think this would be a great like podcast.
Yeah.
Because I think like it shows like normal people with like, and not that I don't love Richard Branson doing everything that he's doing. Amazing, right? But like we're not all billionaires.
Right. Yes, thank you.
Like
we're literally doing this in our kitchen. That's what the room we have in our house.
Yeah, exactly. Like we're just normal people. There are normal people in your workplace right now that also have this. They don't even know it probably, but they do and they struggle with it. And so like just like giving more like visibility to like the normalcy of it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love all of our gears turning together so much.
Yeah.
I feel like little mad scientists in the corner. Just,
I know.
I'm so glad we connected. I think that you're I'm just really looking forward to hopefully keeping in touch with you and continuing to spread ideas around. And some kind of podcast platform seems.
I love
this 3 minutes on TikTok. I'm sorry. It just
no. It doesn't. I know it just doesn't do it justice. I think it's a good like advertising platform for bigger things. But I have a good friend who I worked with in the past her daughter just got diagnosed with dyslexia, and we were talking about doing a podcast. But I try to rein myself in because I could do a million things. But
yeah, you don't want to spread the spoons everywhere, but
and it takes a lot of work and probably a lot of like capital to like, and not a lot of capital, but there's definitely some money involved on the microphones and the sound and all that good stuff. So happy to help wherever. And I'll certainly keep you both in the loop too, like if we ever decide to go that route.
Absolutely.
Resources, but
that would be great. So excited. Oh, Nancy, it was so nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. I mean, honestly, like we'll have to get together at some point in person.
I was gonna say you're already driving to Ann Arbor, so we're right there.
Absolutely. That sounds great. We love that. It can be kind of lonely to be a business owner, so it's nice to have the community,
I have my own office space, which is good. And I rent it out of a building that my dad owns. So he's downstairs some days. And so some days I just go down, I'm like, want to have a cup of coffee? It's just good to connect.
Human connection. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. It was so nice to meet you.
Absolutely. You guys too. Let me know if you need anything.
Oh, your email. Can I get your email so I don't have to? Yes. Like TikTok handle. Okay.